Good morning, friends. Hello. It's Elizabeth Cronnice McLaughlin. It's the 18th of October. It's Resistance Live. Hi, everybody. Wow. 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 The last 24 hours, I just don't even feel like I have the words. It has just been unbelievable. Just utterly unbelievable. All right, first things first, while everybody's logging on, our Rise Activist Leader Bootcamp has a free webinar coming up today in 2 hours. If you want to join us, I have posted the link to that on the Patreon feed again. Please feel free to sign up and learn everything you need to know about Rise and how it can work for you to kind of grow your activism as we head toward 2020 and give you a lifeline and help you be a part of a great community of women and others who are invested in making the world a better place. And you can also still register GaiaLeadershipProject.com/rise. Okay. Wow. I'm like looking at my list of topics to talk about today, and it's like I don't even know where to start. Let's start with Mick Mulvaney. How about that? So yesterday, just to give you the recap, Mick Mulvaney held a press conference at the White House. And in the course of that press conference, where he not only announced that the Trump Doral has been chosen for the G7, and we'll get to that in a minute, he actually confessed again, in real time, that the administration had been engaged in felonies to get Ukraine to interfere in the 2020 election and also to investigate Hillary Clinton and the DNC based on this crazy, disproven conspiracy theory about the DNC server potentially being held in Ukraine. And literally, he admitted it on tape. And I was watching it in real time as it was going down with my mouth wide open, because it seems to be that they don't have any problem committing crimes. They actually also seem to be in the mentality right now that if they admit they do it right out in the open, then somehow they think they won't be held accountable. So I want to just point out a couple of things about, this particular set of statements that were made by Mick Mulvaney. There were a couple of things about it that were really, honestly, quite profoundly offensive, right? There was the statement of "get over it," right? This is what we do, get over it. We're destroying American democracy and auctioning it off for interference, but, get over it. Then there was the fact that he admitted that, they'd actually done this, that aid had been held up for the president's personal political interests. Again, that's illegal. And that then claimed there wasn't a quid pro quo, and that's a quid pro quo. I want to just make it all very clear to you, by the way. We've said this many, 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 many times on this broadcast, but you do not need a quid pro quo to show a violation of the federal election laws. Okay, so they don't even need to prove it to be guilty of the violation. But the second thing is that you don't actually have to say the words quid pro quo in cases where it is legally required in order to show it. So the example I gave about this yesterday on Twitter, which is relevant to mention again here, is that, the context in which quid pro quo is used sometimes in the law, this is one example, is in cases of sexual harassment, where a boss says to you, you have to sleep with me or I'm going to fire you. That's a per se quid pro quo. Do this or do this and you'll get promoted, right? If you sleep with me, you'll get promoted. That's a quid pro quo. No one needs that boss to actually say, and this is a quid pro quo, in order to understand what is on offer. And the law and employment discrimination cases based on sexual harassment do not require the boss to say quid pro quo in order to prove it. So the idea that if you didn't say the words quid pro quo, somehow that is not what you were engaged in is a falsehood to begin with. But second of all, you don't even need a quid pro quo to show the violations of the felonies that are involved here. So that whole thing was also exceedingly weird. There was also this statement of, we do this all the time, which Mick Mulvaney said, we do this all the time. The thing that concerns me about that is not just that, we already know they're so deep in the weeds with Ukraine. It also has to do with other ways in which they may have held up aid for other purposes. And he, in fact, admitted yesterday, and this isn't getting a lot of traffic, which is one of the reasons why it seriously concerns me. He admitted that the administration had held up aid to the Northern Triangle countries in Central America because they were trying to keep them from allowing people to leave, to immigrate to the United States. And that in and of itself is also, by the way, an abuse of power, and by the way, illegal. So, there was just layers and layers and layers of awful in this press conference with Mick Mulvaney yesterday. And then he did the thing of trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube when he realized what he had done. So late last night, he issued this statement that was like, it's all fake news, right? And everybody's like, but you're on tape saying that you did it and you do it all the time and get over it. So it's very bad. Adam Schiff, very bad for them. Adam Schiff said last night that what was a very, very, very bad situation became much, much worse as a result of what Mulvaney did. I think that the place that I'm at today, and I think the place that a lot of us are at today is it feels like it's a bottomless pit, right? And the sense about this particular set of circumstances with Mulvaney yesterday is that they're just violating the law with impunity. They're out there committing felonies with impunity. People are dying as a result of it. It's just disturbing to not see the forward movement right now on the front of impeachment in the way that we should. I don't want to discount that we have had back-to-back depositions now for more than a week of 10 hours a day of testimony being taken on Ukraine. And the word out of the Hill this morning, at least as it was being reported on MSNBC after I dropped my kids off, is that the evidence that they have now is pretty much overwhelming. My question, and that's great, we want that, right? My question right now at this point is, we very much want to see articles of impeachment filed and everything moving forward in that direction as quickly as humanly possible. Okay, so let's talk about the Doral, because this in and of itself is a standalone, very big deal. They announced yesterday that the G7, which is scheduled for June of 2020, will be held at the Trump Doral. We learned yesterday that they did no security check, as they would need to do on the property and in the surrounding town to host 7 of the world's most powerful leaders, all of their staff, all of their support teams, in the event of a terrorist attack. And, to me, from where I sit, that in and of itself is a seriously concerning factor for this particular set of affairs. But even worse than that is the fact that where we find ourselves right now with this is that the president has granted himself a government contract. And that, by the way, as Walt Schaub, you all know I love Walt. He's the former head of the Office of Government Ethics. He quit in the first part of the Trump administration. He is a profoundly significant, he now works with Crew. He's a profoundly significant voice on the issue of government ethics. It has basically said, there's no point in having an Office of Government Ethics if the president can grant himself a contract for something like this, or period. And he's right. Fundamentally, he's right. So, this is corruption out in the open at the highest levels. This is the kind of things that we would expect to see in banana republic dictatorships happening right here in the United States of America. There needs to be some form of response to this that makes sure, one, that it doesn't happen, and second of all, recognizes that this also is an impeachable offense. So, I did say on Twitter yesterday, I'm going to say it again, I will be very shocked if Trump is still in office by next June. Because, the other thing here is that we have to look at this in the trajectory of everything else that's going on. So this whole thing may be a moot point, of course, if he's removed from office or resigns. But all that said, it is an absolute new low in the context of the corruption of this government. The word has it, they made some false noises about looking at other locations and never actually really did. So that's that. I want to mention as well, that Rick Perry has resigned when we're talking about Ukraine and corruption and everything else. He was originally slated to leave office sometime in November. He announced yesterday that he resigned on the spot, basically. There's a lot of question right now this morning about what is likely to be the outcome of that. Is he going to cooperate with Congress? Is he going to testify? He gave a very strange interview a couple of days ago where he appeared to contradict the president. He is one of the now known three amigos. So who knows what's going to come of that. Today is his deadline to turn over documents under subpoenas from the House. And, you know, at this stage of the game, there's a lot to be concerned about there as well. I mean, if he flips on Trump, that's going to be another nail in the coffin. And, you know, I'll just, you know, we talked about these massive numbers of depositions. We're now at more than half a dozen witnesses who are putting the president at the center of this scheme to extort false dirt on the Bidens in exchange for aid. So we've got mountains and mountains and mountains of evidence now. And if Rick Perry adds to the pile on this, it's going to be significant. All right. The other thing that we had yesterday on this front, which is no small thing, is that, you know, Pence and Pompeo had their meeting with Erdogan. They came out, they did this whole press conference about having reached a ceasefire agreement and how great it was. The president said civilization is happy today, and then also went on to say that the Kurds needed to be cleansed out of their homes. And it turns out the whole thing is a sham because there was fighting overnight. There was gunfire in the area that the ceasefire was supposed to take place in for 5 days so that the Kurds could leave everything behind and run. And so fundamentally, we have a false agreement that gave Erdogan everything that he wants. Ethnic cleansing is underway on an ongoing basis in this part of Syria. Turkey has not abided by the ceasefire, the quote unquote ceasefire. They in fact, they came out after Pence made the announcement and said they never agreed to it. And we have the president using the language of ethnic cleansing live on national television. Mitt Romney, I have to give him a little bit of a shout out because he didn't fall for it. He got onto the floor of the Senate yesterday and called out the fact that what is being done to the Kurds with the permission of this president will be a stain on the hands of America for all time. He's right. And, you know, I think we all need to just be mindful right now, you know, that they are playing every card in the deck to try to distract from the president's crimes. And that includes by giving Erdogan everything that he wanted. By the way, you all should be aware that Erdogan held another press conference this morning where he said that the president's letter that was written to him didn't follow diplomatic protocols and there would be a price to pay for that when the time was right. The former Turkish ambassador to the United States shared a meme this morning on Twitter that was a version of the president's letter written in crayon. Memed out as if it was a child's letter to Santa Claus. So just in case you think the embarrassment and humiliation of the United States on the public stage couldn't get any worse, welcome to the 18th of October. Okay. So, you know, the bad news about this, of course, is the news for the Kurds, because still they're being murdered, they're being shot at, they're being bombed, they're being removed from their homes, that they've been demanded to exit the territory. This all plays completely into what Putin wants. Erdogan is Erdogan. We all know that he is a brutal dictator, a violent, genocidal dictator, that we have now given him carte blanche to go murder our former allies. So, you know, it like I said, it's been a hell of a 24 hours and, you know, that's that. Okay. Other bits of breaking news. We had a bit of breaking news out of TASS, which for those of you who don't know is the Russian news service, TASS, yesterday, that Russia and the United States are now apparently collaborating again on cybersecurity. You all remember that back right after the inauguration, Trump made all these statements about how wonderful it would be if Russia worked with the United States on cybersecurity, and everyone flipped out and that got rolled back. Well, now apparently it's on again. And we know that from the Russian news because, you know, why would we have a press briefing in the 108 days that we've had a new press secretary? All right. We had ongoing press statements yesterday from various people on the Hill about the nature of impeachment. Nancy Pelosi refused to put a timetable on impeachment at all. But we continue to have statements out of Mitch McConnell, as I discussed yesterday, about the nature of an impeachment trial. So I want to make a couple of things really clear to you guys here, because we had some funky questions this morning on the Patreon feed that are worthy of some attention, okay? There are hypothetical ways that an impeachment trial could go off the rails. Okay. I mean, and they're all very hypothetical. We have literally never in the history of America, at least not, in the last 200 years or so, had an impeachment trial on the floor of the Senate. We have no idea how the rules are going to flow on this. We have no idea what the role is that Chief Justice Roberts is going to play in deciding any motions that may come to pass. Could the Republicans file a motion to try to dismiss the whole case? Sure. But that has to be ruled on by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court like he's a judge. Could Mitch McConnell try to throw some rule-breaking wrenches into the way in which the impeachment trial is conducted? Sure, but the Chief Justice is going to have to rule on that as well. Is it the case that when you are a juror in the Senate, when you are a senator who's sitting in the nature of an impeachment trial, that you're going to have to sit there 6 days a week and listen to evidence? Yes, that's true. That will potentially have an impact on the senators who are running for president. Does that bother me? No. Honestly, if we're worried about people being able to be out on the campaign trail while democracy burns and we may not have an election in 2020, we're full of it. So, one thing I just want to make clear to all of you when you're reading all these kind of doomsday scenarios about what impeachment could mean, please keep in mind that those are being fronted by Republican sources. There is a major effort underway, and there's been a lot of discussion about the nature of this effort on Twitter this morning. There's a major effort underway right now by the GOP, by unnamed GOP sources, and by the GOP itself to try to make impeachment out to be a disaster for Democrats. And I just want to encourage all of you to not fall for it. The point here is that the president has to be removed. He has to be removed. People are dying. If it means that Warren and Harris can't be on the campaign trail for a couple of months, so be it. And by the way, I hope all of you who have been watching here for the last nearly 3 years now know that the fact that McConnell has some control over the rules in the Senate does not govern the nature of an impeachment trial, because the impeachment trial is run by Chief Justice Roberts. So anybody who's out there spewing all these kind of this random horrible thing could happen, this shitty thing could be done by Mitch McConnell, is fundamentally a part of the Republican effort to spin why impeachment is bad for Democrats. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. Everything, even if it's Jones, with a grain of salt. All right. So we do know that the Senate is preparing for an impeachment trial. As I said yesterday, the good news about that is that it now seems, and I want to make this really clear to all of you, it now seems inevitable that he's going to be impeached in the House. I don't think there's any doubt at this point that articles of impeachment are going to be filed. The votes, we definitely have the votes in the House to pass it. The question now is when. And, I continue to ride the train of now. Why are you waiting? Now. They have mountains of evidence right now just on Ukraine that could support articles of impeachment today. They could pass the House today. There is no reason for them not to be doing that. And, again, I understand the desire to make this thorough and blah, 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 blah. It's not the only bite in the apple you're going to get. Not the only bite. They could impeach him on Ukraine. They could impeach him on paying off Stormy Daniels. They could impeach him on corruption and fraud and emoluments and God knows what else. They could impeach him on immigration offenses and crimes against humanity. They can do all of that in consecutive order, right? They could do here's our articles of impeachment today. Here's the ones for next week. Here's the ones 2 weeks from now. What they really ought to be doing is just filing the first set of articles of impeachment so that we can get fucking going on getting this guy out of office. And y'all can tell I'm mad and fired up today and upset. And yesterday was hell. And a lot of us are kind of Jesus Christ, get it done already. All right. I have to mention a couple final things. Please don't log off because this is really relevant on Brexit. There is a deal now that has been approved by the EU on Brexit. Tomorrow, Saturday, there is a vote in Parliament on whether or not this particular Brexit deal is going to pass. It is a very, very big deal for the UK, for whether or not the UK is going to be broken up, for whether or not Scottish independence is a likely possibility, because if this deal passes, I can basically guarantee you that there's going to be a Scottish independence vote next year. And for very serious, larger reasons of trade and economics that directly impact the United States. I want you all to pay attention to it because it's not small. And I know it's hard to have a bandwidth for this kind of stuff when there's so much else going on in this country at this moment in time. But Brexit is a massive deal. And if this particular deal that's been struck and approved by the EU now is approved in Parliament tomorrow, Brexit happens on the 31st of October. There are some provisions that will not go into effect until next year, but it will be effective the 31st of October. So that is a very big deal. There's other stuff going on, by the way, worldwide right now that you should be aware of. Barcelona is shut down today with protests over Catalonian independence. And there's a lot going on there with, like, Catalonian citizens being shot and various aspects of violence being perpetrated by the state for Catalonian independence movements. By the way, there's a lot to know about here in the background. I know this because I've been to the area of Spain that governs all of this. But in any event, just know this: there's uprisings happening all over the world today, in a variety of locations over government corruption and the like. And the world is kind of like on fire in all sorts of other ways that we really do need to be aware of, even with everything that's happening here. There is a growing worldwide movement right now against government corruption of all sorts. There's also really interesting and important independence movements happening in areas that have previously been colonized or are being otherwise adversely affected by policies like Brexit. So we need to be aware, and this is part of, like, not falling for Trump's isolationist bullshit. We need to be aware that we're all connected and that these things that are happening elsewhere in the world are going to impact us, and they impact our foreign policy, and Trump's impacting everybody. Like, everybody is watching what is happening here, going like that he's functionally insane, that he's not being removed, and that he's killing people. So, please do your best, and I know it's a lot to ask because our bandwidths are very short and everyone is incredibly burnt out and exhausted by all of this, but please do your best to stay informed about what's happening elsewhere in the world, because it's going to matter, like, really seriously with regard to Brexit in like 23 days. Please do your part. It's just so important and significant at this point to stay informed. All right. I have to do a big mention this morning for something that happened on the Twitter feed as we wind down. One of the things that I have been doing as a part of, like, my shout outs on Twitter, because my platform, by the way, you all should know this, my platform is so big right now that when I actually tweet at somebody, they get notifications about it if their notifications are turned on. So I've been underway tweeting at the GOP relentlessly for like the last couple of weeks. Some of you may have noticed this. I actually am now going straight at McConnell, and pointing out the things that are happening that should wake him the fuck up about the need to get on board with removing the president. I watched this after the fact that the ceasefire was false and our allies are still being murdered, and that we're all being played. And there was like 15 people who went on there and were like, McConnell doesn't give a shit. He's never going to do anything. You're wasting your time. Why are you doing this? Blah, 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 blah. I understand why many of you, oh, here's Sophie getting mad. I understand why there's many of you that may be upset by the idea that I would be shouting at McConnell and asking him to do something. I understand that. Okay. I get it. I get that we're all very frustrated and upset about a lot of different things right now for good reason. Okay. And I'm going to say this. If you are not making phone calls right now to your senators and your representatives, you are not participating in democracy to save it. Going on Twitter and like yelling at people who are out there trying to get McConnell to do things, or those of us who are shouting out the GOP, or those of us who are targeting Mitt Romney and others to try to get them to break. And there's a lot of us with large platforms who are engaged in this. Just so you know, by the way, there's groups on Twitter right now of activists who are working together to amplify significant tweets to try to make a difference. And I'm in like 6 of them. If you are going onto Twitter and just complaining about how nothing's going to get done, you're directing your energy in the wrong way. And, if you're directing your energy at me for trying to get McConnell to do something, I really want to encourage you to instead direct that energy to your reps and your senators and to Pelosi and to Adam Schiff and to anybody else who will pick up the phone to try to get him removed from office. It is one of those situations. I mean, and I know I'm a broken record on this right now, but if they do not hear from us, they will not act. And, I read an article this morning that I found profoundly disturbing. And again, I shouted out the House Democrats on this, that they're looking at polling in purple states right now to determine whether or not they should impeach. There comes a point where there's a moral question, not just a political question, not even just a legal question, a moral question about whether or not you're going to allow an ethnic cleansing, endorsing, genocide perpetrating president to remain in office who's mentally unstable and has the nuclear codes. It's a moral question. And the importance of all of us doing what we need to do right now to make those phone calls and to make our voices heard is beyond important. Beyond important. And I'm doing my part, and I want you to do yours. Okay. So that's that. Please make sure that if you are tempted to say, like, McConnell's not going to do anything because he's in the pocket of the Russians, yeah, that all may still be true, but that doesn't mean it's not worth trying. And it doesn't mean, by the way, that if his political future is sinking with this ship that he has tied himself to, that he might not at some point be convinced to cut the rope. So we got to keep putting all of our effort where it belongs. All right. Much love to all of you. I know I'm going to see some of you on this webinar we're hosting at 11 o'clock for free to talk about the RISE program headed into 2020. I got a lot of good stuff to share on that. And you can, of course, register for RISE, GaiaLeadershipProject.com/RISE. Our registration is open until early November. Class starts the 11th of November, all virtual. I hope to see as many of you in there as possible. And I will talk to all of you soon. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Try to get some peace. I love you. Bye.